Hi there. We're going to talk about notes today. Just so you know, I'm tuned to standard, but tuning's really not going to matter in this particular instance. Really, what you're going to be more concerned with is the concept I'm going to be talking about, which is understanding the note and specifically pitch. Now, normally as a guitarist, we learn big block chords. You know, that's a G and it just always is. Or that's a C and it just always is. But really what a C is it's made up of a series of notes. And so really to understand what's going on with chords, we need to understand what's going on with notes anyway. So this is really just going to talk about that. If you're like, hey dude, I already know all this stuff, then you probably don't need to be watching this. If this is something new to you, then it's going to be kind of cool, because when you start thinking about chords in this way, it helps to it just helps open your mind a bit. So we're going to switch to some diagrams I've got going on here. You can see here that there's a whole series of notes, and I've written them out like they would be on a piano keyboard. Now you're saying, hey, I play a guitar, I really don't care about the keyboard. Well, the reason that we're looking at the keyboard right now is because it helps to more visually represent what's going on with notes. And we can see that C is next to D in terms of the white keys, but there's a black key in the middle there. Same thing with D and E. There's no black key between E and F. And so on down the line. You know, F and G, there's a black key. G and A, there's a black key. A and B, there's a black key. B and C, there is none. The distance between two keys is a half step. If you are looking at a guitar, just, you know, for your information, the distance between one fret and another, half step. Okay? If there's a black key in between them, really the black key is what's next to the white key. And so what happens is there's actually another note in between C and D, and it's that black key there. On the guitar, in between C and D, 2 frets, whole step. Half step, 1 fret, whole step, 2 frets. Got it? Pretty simple. The way that we refer to the note that's in between, say, C and D, is we use either a sharp or a flat. Sharps and flats are real easy to understand. Sharp means I'm going up in pitch 1/2 step. So one could call the note between C and D C sharp, because it's a half step above C. But one could call the note in between C and D D flat, because flat means it is lower in pitch 1/2 step from the note that you're talking about. So we've got the same note, but if we're talking about it in relative position to D, it's now D flat. So that note in the middle there's got kind of an identity complex going on. He could be C sharp, he could be D flat. Frankly, most of the time, you really don't think about it and really don't care. It's just a good way to be able to communicate with other musicians. Say, for example, you really think in sharps, but your friend really thinks in flats. That's okay. When he writes out his sheet, he'll write flats. When you write out yours, you'll write sharps. As long as you're talking about the same actual note, nobody really will care. Now, the main question that always comes to me when I learn some new concept like this is, hey, that's great, but how in the world can I use that in my everyday life? And here's a good example. Say you know C. So that's our just garden variety open C chord there. Nothing special. And you're going to be playing with a worship leader, and he hands you a lead sheet, and instead of C, he says, just because of the way the songs are, the keys that he's able to sing in, he says, hey, I'm not going to do this in C today. We're going to do this in C sharp. Now, there are a million ways to find a good C sharp to use, but in this instance, what we're going to do is we're going to take our C, and we know that this C note, if we raise it 1/2 step, is C sharp, from what we learned about notes, right? And what we learned about what sharp means. So we're going to take that concept, we're going to apply it to our whole chord. Now what I've done is just bar the first fret and then use the rest of my fingers to make a C chord. Now, there are easier, less complicated, and definitely more comfortable ways to do this. But in this instance, we're just noting that you can take stuff up a half step and it becomes sharp. So we can take the same concept that we use with a note and we can use it with a chord. Now you probably do this without even thinking about it with the E and the F chord, because you'll notice E and F are a half step apart. If you ever wondered why, that's why. That's just how music is set up. It's always C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. There's a half step between E and F. There's a half step between B and C. And there's a whole step between everything else. So if you're ever trying to figure out, well, why is it that when I play a shape like an E, on the 5th fret it's an A, it's because E, F, G, A. Now I'm just doing notes there, but we can do chords. E, F, G, A. No big deal. So there are all sorts of cool things that understanding notes can teach us about chords, and this just happens to be one of them. Sometimes this ends up being a hard thing for guitarists to understand just because we tend to learn things in a different way, in a different order than, say, someone who's classically trained on the piano or some other type of instrument would be. So I challenge you to do a couple things. First one is write out a series of all the notes so that you can figure out what's going on. Because what will happen is you'll realize, well, hey, some notes, like let's say B for example, I've got this B here. It's an open string, and I can also fret it right here. I got the same B. Or I can fret it here, and I've got the same B. Or I can fret it here, and I've got the same B. So I've got the same note across 5 different strings. That really provides for a great flexibility on the instrument like the guitar, So you might write out what the notes are and then start keeping track of what notes are on what strings. The ones to memorize are, notes on the 6th string, notes on the 5th string. That's really going to help you out. Memorizing the notes on the 4th and the 3rd are easy because you'll know it's E, A, D, G. Well, D and G are a whole step below E and A. So if you know this is an A here, then you know it's a G here. It's a whole step below. If you know this is a D here, then you know it's a C here because it's a whole step below. B is kind of weird, but the B string always is a little weird. You just have to deal with that. Anyway, I hope you learned some cool stuff about notes. Next time we're going to talk about how notes are arranged into scales and a little bit about how scales then can be used in ways that will affect what you're going to do, like say on a typical Sunday morning or as you're preparing for your worship service. Thanks!